report time to finish our comments on today's primary activities. So I'm going to take liberty to do that too.
Thank you. And I understand that the party doesn't start until 5:30, so take as much time as you like, Director George.
Well, the question isn't when does the party start, it's when the partying starts.
Yes.
And with 4 hours between, we're going to be done here in about 10 minutes anyway.
Right.
So 1:30 to 5:30, that could be dangerous. All right, discipline at hand. So, as you know, for my monthly report, I always like to forecast or report on weather conditions in the basin, and I have the better resource tool than anyone else does here, and that's the current issue of the Farmer's Almanac. And so I like to share that with you, and so I, of course, have consulted it. And it told me that it would be dry all fall in northwest Colorado, and it would be okay to tear the roof off the college's administration building to put on the new roof. There'd be plenty of time, no moisture, warm and dry. So finally, about 6 weeks ago, we tore the roof off, and it started raining. And since then, we've had a rainstorm or a snowstorm every 4 days. So just telling you that you don't think the Farmer's Almanac is any good, and I'm telling you it isn't either. So yesterday, state engineer showed the printout of what El Nino is likely to do. I can't do any better than that. I think we're already seeing the potential for lots more moisture. The storm track coming in from the Pacific is very normal this year so far. And when that happens, that usually foretells a pretty good snow year. And so we're all looking pretty hopeful. James, you always put some of the data in your director's report about the basin, the lower basin, and how the two big reservoirs doing. Thank you for doing that, because I always like to look at it, and that really vision of what's going on in the basin. The nicest one I see of the data is that as of October 15, the inflow at Powell was 94% of average. And I think a lot of this moisture's come since then too. So that's good. Thank you for continuing to put that in there. And for the rest of us, if there's always a pretty good summary of what's going on in Colorado River issues in James's report. And then we also get the good report from the Attorney General's office. So I don't want to necessarily repeat those things. It was a good summary by Ken Neubecker of what's going on in the Colorado Basin Roundtable. I see Chairman Jim Pokrant is here. Jim has always been a good hand to help me in catching up and being able to report to you. He had reminded me of many of the things that Ken said, but he also focused on a couple of things that I just want to highlight. That are sort of new and going forward, which is where the rest of my comments are going to be. The Basin Roundtable is wanting to step up its interest and activity in reuse of water. And what I liked about the observation that Jim made was that they're going to focus on how do you change the tone of the conversation about reuse water. Because right now when you're having a conversation with anybody about reuse, it's a negative. It's, what did you call it, from toilet to tap? And just that sort of image isn't helpful, but it's real. And so the idea is, let's see if we can improve that, the tone of that conversation. I think we absolutely have to do that. It's a cultural thing. And we know that reuse will increasingly be part of the solutions in the future. And so we need to begin to change the language and the impact of language. So that's a good one, and I'll be anxious to follow that. The other big piece that Jim and I would visit about is recognizing the reality that the the Western Slope Basin Roundtables, while facing many of the same issues and while working just as hard in each case to solve local problems and in sharing statewide conversations, nonetheless, the Western Slope Basin Roundtables are not of the same view. There is probably just as much difference of view and opinion and issues of importance in that group as there is with any of us statewide. So the Colorado Basin Roundtable wants to, I think, continue to take leadership and see if we can't improve upon that and try to find out what it is, sort of microcosm of the whole state conversation. And I certainly embrace that. I think we can do some, put some effort in on that and continue to improve that. So you'll see that happening, I think, more as time goes on, which will help the West Side participation in state issues be a little bit better. So let me then say just finally my observations of today. This report and everything that it reflects. I mean, you can't just say, well, it's a book. No, it isn't. It's a symbol of an effort. Anyway, however you look at it and however you use it as a metaphor, it's very nicely done in every respect. And I say that from back at the beginning and how carefully the executive order was crafted, because it was so critical that executive order aim us in the right direction, and it did. And that direction was followed at every turn. And we now, I don't think any effort, any time in history or anywhere else of this kind could have produced a better product than what we have here. And so we've all been patting one another on the back, and well, we should. And I just wanted to add to that. Nicely done. To me, it is the textbook that I hoped for. It is the reference tool. And now going forward, we all need to think about how we use that tool. I'll probably eventually get to where I don't pack this thing around and I'll have it in my iPad and actually where I can use it, but not yet. So the only problem I have, James, and I'm sure this is your fault, it's really heavy. So I'll have to get a bigger briefcase. The other part of going forward, I think we heard as the basins, the representative of the basins talked, it's projects. And that is as it should be, because remember when we started the first conversation in 2005, we asked two questions of each basin. What do you need? What do you need? And we were asking ourselves here, what's the state's role in answering those questions in the basins? But we also said, and this piece sometimes gets lost, we also said, now you have to ask and answer the second question. It's a question that has two parts, or two questions as a whole. Yes, ask what you need and we'll help get there. But you also have to ask and answer, what are you willing to give up to others for you to get what you need? You didn't hear as much of that second question today. And so my whole point is, it is now time to shift the focus to include the second question, not away from the first question. It's on and running. It's projects. And our job here is to keep the resources coming for the projects, because that answers need. But in time, everyone has to sit and say, wait a minute, I have to give up something? Absolutely you do. And we're trying to let us decide that at home. What are we willing to give up? That's next steps. So let's be thinking on that and recognize that we have for sure shifted gears. The old truck's on its way, and we've shifted a gear today. Whether we've shifted up to go faster or we've shifted down to climb a steeper hill remains to be seen. But clearly something has changed, and it's all for the good. So I'm very pleased with what we have here, and I feel so fortunate to have been a part of it for all these years. So, questions for me? Sure, Alan.
Director Hamel.
Director George, this morning at breakfast, we were doing everything from reminiscing to talking about the future and what an important reference document this is. And you mentioned an idea about the use of this and staff recommendations. Would you want to share that?
Okay, sure. So what I think we should do with this, and I've mentioned it to a couple of staff members, and I didn't want to get out ahead of them, but I will anyway, because it's just an idea. But like any good reference tool, it needs to be used. And so how I propose that we should think about using it is from this day forward, anyone that comes to CWCB asking for assistance, and we'll continue to have many, many customers, and we want to serve them, they will now be expected to say, in preparing your application for whatever it is you want, you need to do one more step than you've been doing, and that is to research the state water plan and tell us where your project fits in the plan, and cite for us the citations in the document or in the e-documents that back this up, wherever you're finding your reference, and tell us how your ask fits in the goals of the state plan, and prove by those citations that you're correct. And that we will then analyze that as each project comes through. Also, then I would hope that we could ask of the staff that as you are assigned a project, or you're doing your regular work, and you're readying something for decision making, and you bring it to us, either as an information item or as importantly as an action item, that you will have done the same thing. You will have reviewed what the applicant has said about relationship to the state plan, whether you agree with their interpretation or not. And if there's anything else in the plan that you think should play a role in our decision, and in you recommending what conditions for a positive decision would be. So that in a recommendation now from here on out, we will see the citations, the references, and a short blurb from you that says this fits the state water plan in this respect in these locations. So that's the idea, and I'm certainly open to further conversation, but that's just one way that I was hoping for myself I could use the plan. And it will help me if you can do the heavy lifting on some of the research, because I'll probably not take the time to do it, but it'll help make a better decision. And it also guarantees that this document will live, and that we will actually be putting policy in place guided by this document. And that's really what we want to do. So thank you, Alan. That's what I was planning.
Madam Chair. So,
Thank you, Director McLeod. Director Eklund.
I think that's a great conversation you've teed up, and I think we've got some really good momentum heading in this direction. And the staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we do WSRA applications, the community started doing exactly what you're talking about. So I think that is exactly where we need to go, and it's kind of interesting that the momentum is headed in that direction. So that's good.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director George? Or if not, we'll move on to the San Juan Basin. Director Montgomery.
Well, Director George, you're hard to follow. Those were very insightful comments, and I really appreciated them. I'm going to just stay on the theme of reflection a little bit here, and just again want to say how much I am in awe of all the CWCB staff. I've never met a CWCB staff that I didn't like, and that extremely interesting to talk to. and just been amazed by the energy and dedication that you all really, and just an incredible resource to our state. But along those lines, I also just want to acknowledge sort of the quieter members of our board, and that's Director Stolp, Director King, and somewhat quiet Director Eklund. But, I think you guys, I don't think we often realize how much you are behind this whole ship and really steering. I mean, we know with Director Eklund a little more, but with Director Stolp and Director King, I know you have really been steering the ship, and you're often quiet, but just appreciate the work that you do, and the fact that you're so much involved with the politics that, being in from the Southwest, I don't even think about. And so knowing that you guys have dealt through a lot of politics, it's much appreciated. One of the things I get most excited about is, I mentioned it last meeting, is just the average Joe. I get really excited about people who involved in water and don't work in water, thinking about water. And I've always thought, just to have the water as a common kitchen table conversation is really our goal, ultimately. And so, with that, I wanted to comment on how I was struck by the film, and I thought it was excellent. And I think that kind of resource really touches a lot of people. And hopefully a lot of people will get to see that and have a better understanding of what the plan's all about. I was recently surprised by how many people came up to me that had nothing to do with water and said they had watched the PBS, The Great Divide film. And they had mentioned that they just got sucked into it. They hadn't planned on watching it, but they started seeing it, and they watched the whole thing. And they were so struck by the story. And that meant a lot to me, that so many people are really learning about water. Not only, with the 30,000 comments for the plan, but I just heard from the Harvey and production folks that they estimate that 30,000 people have seen the film already. So that's something I think we can keep aspiring to, having these beautiful visual resources for people. Another thing that I was struck was we recently had elections for our roundtable, and we had, I believe, 7 to 9 new faces who were applying for just a few seats on our roundtable. But it was just exciting to see that interest and that people know about the roundtable. That's a huge effort. One other thing was I was struck by the conversations for people coming up and talking about their roundtables and the things that people said at the beginning and how that's changed. The just leave the money and go away, and the non-consumptive analysis stream plans then, but just the idea of analyzing our environmental flows, no way. We had all of those in the Southwest too, and so it's just fun to have seen the history and know now, for example, in our roundtable, we are looking at our first stream management plan as a pilot to see how we might apply it in, we have 9 basins in our roundtable, so how it might be applied all over the roundtable. And then just to hear people talking a lot about these and looking for flexibility in Colorado water law, which, that was, Colorado water law is sacred, but thinking about how we might add more flexibility and encouragement for ag efficiency. And so it's been quite a ride, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Montgomery. Are there questions for Director Montgomery? Well, hearing none, we'll move to the Gunnison Basin. Director McLeod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll begin with a very brief traditional basin report. The Gunnison Basin is currently running a little bit above average for precipitation this year. All of our reservoirs had slightly above average inflows for the water year. Currently, actually starting this week, the Bureau has ramped up the releases for Blue Mesa to 1,100 CFS to lower the storage for the winter icing target, which is targeted for December 31st to avoid ice jamming in the Gunnison River near the city. As far as the Gunnison Roundtable, Frank Kugel gave you an excellent summary of where we are now and where we're going. But like so many of the other folks, I can repeat to you that in the early days of the Roundtable, we were all staring carefully at each other. Similar to what Director described, except we had three groups. We had the upper basin, the lower basin, and the North Fork, and we all kicked the North Fork around. So it was, 2 against 1. And, the subbasins would meet separately and strategize to make sure that we all had enough representation on the round table that we didn't get overwhelmed by those other guys. And I'd actually like to step back one step further. Since Representative Arndt has joined us, I was recounting, Director George, to her your adventure at State Affairs Committee with the 1177.
Very good, Director McLeod.
I planned that. At the time, we were in under the coat rack at State Affairs Committee at the Water Congress office, debating the qualities of 1177. And Director George knows this. I was not a supporter in the beginning. So as part of this conversion, I'm one. He converted me, and he has accomplished that is pretty remarkable. Since Becky identified me as the mean member of the board, not very subtly either, Becky. And thank you. Like the other folks, I will tell you that in the end, our roundtable really has coalesced, and for several years, if we don't get anything more out of this, what Director George gave us was an opportunity to learn to listen to each other. And I'll tell you, is the most cohesive of any that I have seen. And I think I've attended every one of the roundtable meetings at least twice. And we are a solid, unified group for the good of the basin. And that was an amazing accomplishment. And we thought, if this is all we get done, it's going to be great. But that wasn't all we got done. We are known, or have been until recently known, as not one drop. I mean, that's what Gunnison was always famous for. And we lived it, we breathed it, and we said it repeatedly. But if you read our basin implementation plan, you will notice that we've gone above that now. We've stepped beyond that and said, well, we're going to look to the good of the state. We want to protect our resources. We want to protect what we have. Our number one priority is to protect what we have. But we've also acknowledged to move Colorado into the future, we've got to look beyond that not one drop philosophy, and we've accomplished that. And I'm very proud of our roundtable for having gotten there. I won't tell you that every citizen of the basin has achieved that distinction, but we're making some progress. I want to say a couple of words about Director Stolp. The IBCC was kind of on a wobbly keel in the early years, and when he came to direct it, it really became an amazing and effective instrument. And I don't think there's anyone else who could have done what he did and has done and has accomplished with the IBCC. And I've been proud and honored to attend those meetings and perhaps make a small contribution. But Director Stolp, thank you very much. You made that IBC into what it should have been and what it could have been. Thank you. And the staff, notwithstanding the fact that Becky's always trying to flatter me with telling me I'm the meanest one. They are the best. They're the very best, every one of them, you know. And in this water plan has been a significant effort. They've done tremendous work. It's not limited to that. You know, we've all learned what Tim did recently, for example, with ALP, but I want to repeat what all the rest of you have said. We've got the best staff in the state. You folks are terrific. Thanks for your help. Thanks for your effort. And, you know, honestly, you'll all be here long after we're gone. So, you know, you're the heartbeat of this operation, and keep up the good work. Finally, one thing that Frank did not mention in terms of going forward, and it builds on the theme that Director George mentioned, we do have a collaborative effort going forward among the 4 West Slope roundtables, which we will bring to you at the March meeting for a water supply reserve account grant application. And it represents what I think is a major step forward in collaborating among the West Slope basins, and our ultimate goal is to enlarge that to the entire state. But that's the big surprise we'll have for you at March, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. So that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Well, Director McLeod, surely ask you what the surprise is, so. I will. Oh, darn. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Director McLeod? If not, we'll move to the North Platte Basin. Director Wattenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to take my time during my basin report for what I consider some well-deserved thank yous. First off, I would like to definitely thank the North Platte Basin Roundtable members. Their hard work, they really stepped it up. Our Mr. Kent Crowder for his leadership. Dr. Stolp, I truly appreciate your leadership with the IBCC. North Platte Basin members are John Rich and Mike Allnut. They do travel, and we truly appreciate that. The other part, I'd truly like to say thank you to our excellent staff. Words don't seem to come to me that easily for just the amount of really excellent work that you do. And also thank you, fellow board members. It's been truly a pleasure to work with you. Thank you, Director Eklund, very much deserved. And I would also like to thank Director King for his outstanding work. And I guess the final person, I would like to thank the governor for appointing me to this outstanding and distinguished organization. And I am very proud to be part of this today. So with that, I'll end that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wattenberg. Any questions for Director Wattenberg? No. Well, reporting for the South Platte Basin, you know, mentioned that she thought of the average Joe, and I assume that's the average citizen in your basin. I'm going to tell you, and you've all witnessed it now, we have an above average Joe in the South Platte Basin, and he gave our report this morning for our basin. Joe, thank you. He really is truly one of the young, outstanding water leaders that's stepping forward. And Joe, you've got a lot of work to do. You know, many of us will be moving on soon, and you just have a big job ahead of you. In terms of the South Platte Basin, you know, you all were out there in May and it was flooding. I'm as a result of the cloud seeding. Is Joe Busto here? There he is. You know, Joe, I know you intended for all that moisture to go into the mountainous area, as someone indicated they thought you were intending, but Some of it slipped over the hill and caused the fields to be so wet, even the dryland fields, that the farmers couldn't get in there to work. So thanks for the water, Joe. In terms of the river condition, the South Platte is still running high. Joe Frank, maybe you know the numbers today. I don't know them today, but we really are still sending more water over the state line in Nebraska than we need to be, and it indicates the need for additional storage. So as was mentioned in our report earlier today, if we're able to build those IP&P projects that are on the book, that will help a tremendous amount. The NIST project basically utilizes native water, which is something we want to do. We want to take care of our problems in our own basin. We want to maximize the use of that water and really put that water to beneficial use. So these projects are extremely important, and the work that the staff and this board did on coming up with ideas for helping to ease the permitting situation is really important. We haven't found all the solutions yet, but we're working towards them. And I want to give a hand to our federal partners too, because I think they've been listening to what we've been saying. I don't know that they're going to change anything in their operations, but at least they've heard the message. And as I've traveled in other states recently, the other states are aware that we're developing a water plan here, and a lot of the federal agencies were represented at those other meetings, and they're aware that we're doing this water plan too. So I think that will put Colorado in good position for the future. Let's see, it seems like I had one. Oh, yes, I do have one other very important thing. I know that I frequently thank the staff for taking their time to educate us board members, to show us around. You all really have done a tremendous job, and I think of all the state employees, the dedication of the Water Conservation Board staff is really tremendous, as well as the water resources. Dick Wolfshop does a tremendous job too. So I want to thank you all. Hopefully I've gotten to you all individually, and keep up the good work, because we still have a lot of work to do. And I'm going to end my comments, and I won't accept any questions. So next we'll move on to the Director, I guess I'll call on you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate your recognition of Joe Busto's good work and ask that you pass that along to Senator Sonnenberg.
I'll let him know that you send his regards. Thank you. Now I'll call on Director Hamill for the Arkansas Basin Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly a big day in Colorado history, and I'll reminisce a bit. And being a senior, if I enter into a senior moment and get on a soapbox, just cut me off, please. But a couple just kind of items from the Arkansas. Steve Miller and I were talking about the upcoming of this compact meeting that he and Director Eklund and Director Stolp will be attending, representing Colorado with our other Colorado representatives. And Steve recently sent to our roundtable some ideas on some other projects. And one of those projects is better utilization of the most underutilized reservoir we have in the Arkansas Basin, and that is John Martin. And look at some way to use some of that storage that is vacant, probably 9 out of 10 years or more. You know, the last time it filled and spilled was, I think, 99, and then it did fill some this year. So, in fact, a pretty good fill. But so we'll be looking at adding that onto our projects list, I'm sure, utilizing the storage that we have in both owned facilities by water districts or cities, but also in federal owned facilities. I know Representative Arndt is here. I just want to mention Arkansas, the Lower Arkansas Basin Roundtable is working on another piece of legislation and working with Representative Arndt, and it's a Colorado water bank to facilitate ag water sharing. And the Lowers met with a couple of our staff members, and it would have a major role as CWCB to actually operate the bank, and also the state engineer to play a major role. Kind of a different concept or a broader concept, but you know, kind of follows after the 1248, the leasing fallowing legislation. I just wanted to, in case fellow board members hear about it, James and I've talked. I think he can send out, they've done kind of a 1.5-page letter that overviews it in a fact sheet. I think all the board members should have that to be thinking about, you know, if this legislation moves forward, you know, what input this board can give and staff to that process. So if I could ask that of you, Director Eklund. An important thing in the Arkansas Basin is augmentation water for what are called Rule 10 and Rule 14 plans. That's for well augmentation and for ag efficiencies. And a real source of that water are leases that they enter into either on annual leases, or in the case of the Board of Waterworks, they've entered some long leases, 20 and 30-year leases, so that's there for agriculture and small communities. Well, I'm going to bring more news to you as it goes. Colorado Springs Utilities is going to, and Aurora also participates in some of these leases in the basin, is looking at a new kind of a water sharing where they would, in water years that there's extra water, they would actually, through contract, provide that water and then expect by a certain date to have it, part of it repaid, like half of it. And then if the entity or ditch or augmentation group couldn't, then they'd pay a fee. So we'll keep you posted on that. But these leases from the entities that have water in their portfolio for future use, and it could be some of their Trans Mountain water or Trans Mountain return flows, is really critical to the interim period in our basin implementation plan to continue to provide. So I'll bring more news on that. Our new chair, Sandy White, gave a good kind of quick overview of the Arkansas. We want to be into full implementation, and then we're off to a good start. We do have a couple new officers in our executive committee members in our roundtable. Been going 10 years now, so we want to relook at our bylaws. And Sandy is one of the newer people on the roundtable that's taken an active role. We have a new PEPL representative, Al Tucker, who couldn't make it up for the grant thing, dealing with some of the storm. Amazing storm. Snowed from Walsenburg to New Mexico, closed I-25, and it snowed from kind of South Colorado Springs up to the Denver area, kind of the center part of the Arkansas, although I think Director Stelp mentioned they did get a little snow out east, kind of Pueblo sat in a hole, and we got wind, a lot of wind. But anyway, we have some new people on the roundtable, and so we'll be moving forward implementation. The three areas with the grant approval yesterday will be they're writing job descriptions now. That's an important part of having a coordinator. Have a good job description and a good direction on what the expectation is for those. And so all three are up and working. Now to reminisce a bit. And we've had several parts of this reminiscing today. And of course, Director George, his name has come up. I did this quite a few board meetings ago, but having been in this business now for 55 years, I got to see a lot of things happen. And what we're seeing, which is a great transition, is more regional approaches is set by the Denver West Slope agreements, the WISE project. We need a WISE project in the Arkansas because we have the biggest part of our gap is in northern El Paso County. Colorado Springs Utilities with the completion of Southern Delivery System with their partners, Pueblo West, Fountain and Security will have piping or infrastructure. So, but those types of collaborations, are so critical. And if you think back and having been blessed or the fortune to be part of SWASI back in the 2002 drought through to 2003 when it was first approved and our first type of roundtables in 2004. And then with Rush George coming to Pueblo, I think many people have described the looks in the room. When he came to Pueblo in 2005, he met 100 and some people sitting in the Pueblo Convention Center. And not many people had their hands crossed. And there wasn't a lot of discussion that day. There was some, because you don't get in a meeting with Director George and he won't let you just sit there. He expects some dialogue and to think what we've done to today. So when the governor gave us the directive in 2013, you say, how can we get this done? But as you reflected, you think about the work that had been done, and we wouldn't be where we're at today if that hadn't happened. And so it took a lot of people from throughout our state to make this happen. And this really is a car to water plan created by Coloradoans for Coloradoans' future. Because it took us all. And remember when we looked at the different plans, the California plan, the bottom down or the top down, and Texas was more of a bottom up. That's so great to see that we were able, all of us, to do that today. So I liked it, and I'll miss people when I start thanking, so I'll try to generalize, but know that it goes to you as individual. First, thank my fellow board members. I worked for one board for 52 years, and I had some great boards. And for many years of that, it was great boards. And I've been on board, served on many different kinds of local and regional boards. But this board, the work you do together to deal with issues and not personalities, or you stay to the top, you provide great leadership. And we have a great staff, starting with our director, our leadership team within CWCB, and the staff members. And they touched on it. I think it was Becky this morning about, when we got handed that executive order, we had some drought, kind of record-setting drought. We had some fires going on and had some clear back in 2012. And then we ended up with a flood. Only Colorado could have record drought, record fires, and record floods all in the same year. And when we did this, we didn't add 10 new staff members to work on a Colorado water plan. We turned to our dedicated staff. And whether they worked directly on the water plan or were working on drought or fire, they all stepped up and didn't hear any complaints. We need to recognize their spouses, significant others, their kids in this process, because you can't do it without your family. And I think I've mentioned a couple times, I worry occasionally about people's family when you go through these stresses, that they don't get hurt in the process. And then the governor's guidance was outstanding. Our Director Stahl, Director King, I think gave us great support and good direction. I know that Director Stahl has wore out one brand new pickup during this water plan, or maybe a pickup and a half. And so is our staff. A lot of byway time. But just want to say thank you. And it's truly an honor to be part of this. I had a lot of exciting things happen in my long career, and this is going to fit right up there at the top. And to think what Colorado can do to implement this. At our roundtable, one of the questions I was asked this month is, okay, we got a plan, what keeps it off the shelf? One of the things I said is the people in that room out at the University of Colorado State University Pueblo. It was Southern Colorado State College when I went there. But, and I said, us in this room, it's up to us on the basin implementation plan, and look to the state for help and guidance and to the great help that CWCB staff. And somebody says, well, what about after Governor Hickenlooper? And I says, well, that's then going to be up to CWCB, the board and staff, that this plan, and we had a great discussion of it led off by Director George. It's up to us now, and whoever our predecessors or whoever follows us on this board, to make sure that we continually look to this plan and that we just do nothing but make it better and make it a live document. But thank you.
Thank you, Director Hamill. Any questions for Director Hamill? No. We will move on now to County of Denver. Director Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. One of the things that I most love about this board, both from this experience and the time I was on the board 15 years ago now, is your willingness to listen and to come to a consensus. I've found that almost any issue, we can come together and figure out how to do it right, even though we represent different parts of the state. I very much appreciate with our plan, you're willing to listen to me, tough life in urban areas, which is not something I'd ever really tried to articulate before. But thank you for listening. Thank you, staff, for getting some of that in the plan. It's just a demonstration that we do, in fact, the board does listen to everybody. And I think that is one of the reasons that The plan is as good as it is and can be celebrated in the way it deserves to be celebrated. In my reminiscing, I have an admission to make, which is in the first 6 or so years of the Basin Roundtables, I was not much of a fan. And I think that comes from the experience of probably the nicest person at Denver Water. We'll call him Cindy Lou Who. We sent him up to the Colorado River Basin Roundtable meetings, which I would consider the den of the Grinch. And it wasn't pretty. And I think this was before Jim was the chair. And so we kind of had to rescue Cindy Lou a few times. But that was a tough beginning. Maybe that's where everybody had to start. Every Basin Roundtable had to start with its own interests, divided though they might have been. And it took a long time, I think, for people to be able to I think that's been great beyond progress. And this is what I stood to where we are. And so I agree with for a state water plan kind of caused people to go back behind into the trenches and, lob the grenades back and forth. We moved beyond that as well. And I think, frankly, if it hadn't been for the state water plan, I don't know. Well, there certainly wouldn't have been basin implementation plans. And I think the state water plan gave form and a goal to the Basin Roundtables and in a way to the IBCC, so that there is now a sort of a clearer structure and a clearer mission in front of all of that. And certainly without the state water plan, I don't think there would have been 30,000 comments on anything we've ever done. And I think it did involve people who aren't water professionals or water groupies, as the case may be. So I really think that the state water plan, in addition to producing this great product, has left in its wake a better organized and more process for discussing issues, and I'm grateful for that. I think what the state water plan did was, among other things, is to create a way that things that previously had been discussed separately got discussed together, and that conservation and reuse and land use and efficiency and agricultural transfers, all those things got discussed in the same venue and at the same time. And I think that makes a huge difference. And I think we discovered that there is no silver bullet, that many things have to happen in order for us to address the challenges ahead of us. And I think that's really important, and it's written in a chapter or two, and that really is progress as well. I want to say something just a moment about reuse. We at Denver Water thought it was kind of ironic that on the day that the state water plan was published, the headline in the Denver Post is "Recycled Water Killing Trees." Not the best headline for a newspaper, but it represents the concept that there is no silver bullet. Reuse of any sort has challenges. Usually when we say reuse, we mean direct potable. And I'm hoping that we can understand that that's not the only thing. Maybe the worst use of wastewater effluent is to treat it to potable standards. Maybe there are other things that we can do with it. And next time we meet in January, I want to do a presentation on what Denver Water is coming to believe may be a kind of a different way to look at some aspects of reuse, basically on-site recycling, but I'll talk about that later. And another thought that occurred to me today, as Director George said, words matter. We keep saying storage, and I think what that connotes for people is a big reservoir that takes the water out of the river and sends it down a pipe to a municipal treatment plant, and that's what storage is. But in fact, maybe we should call them water management facilities, because as we all know, if you can store the water, you can manage the water. And that may be for low flow releases in the summer. That may be for a boat race through a whitewater park. So storage doesn't just mean to meet the supply gap. It can also mean to meet all the other goals that we have in the State Water Plan. And I think another accomplishment of the State Water Plan is we now have measurable goals for watersheds and land use. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have been even thinkable about a year ago. So enormous progress. Again, I want to express my admiration for the dedication of the staff. A couple of technical requests. One is I hope that the remarks that Becky and Jacob and Brent and Kate made this morning, that you can have those transcribed somewhere. I thought it was particularly important, Becky, that you described the ongoing work of the CWCB and all the things that got accomplished while the State Water Plan was being worked on. And the people who did that should know that that's what you said and that we heard it. And then, as Alan mentioned, I've told a couple of people, you really need to compile the number of miles traveled by state staff on the State Water Plan. I know that Director Stolp has put 80,000 miles on his new truck. I know that Brent traveled 16,000 miles in 2014, but that's all I know. And even though it's just a statistic, it's sort of like how many river miles have we protected? It's how much work and time you all spent meeting with everybody around the state. So please do that, because I'm going to brag about it once I get the number. So thank you all for your work. It really is a great accomplishment, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
Thank you, Director Wells. Well said. It's nice to have you as a partner in the South Platte Basin. I like that teaming up. Yes. If there are no questions for Director Wells, we're going to move to the Rio Grande Basin and Director Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and it's been a fine day. I appreciate pausing for a few minutes just to let it all soak in. After all the hard work, and I look around the room, there was a question at the Winter Water Congress Convention, I think 2 years ago, about, are you all in? I thought that was a great theme, and we're seeing the results of people getting all in spite of the unknowns and expectations that weren't clear. So I'm enjoying soaking it in today. I agree with much that has been said here today. Louis Entz came and convinced me to put my name in the hat to serve on the Water Conservation Board a few years ago. He said, it will be the most meaningful thing that you've ever been involved in. And I was a little skeptical, because raising teenage kids and being involved with just life's busyness. But Senator Entz was right, Senator Ament. It's been very meaningful, and today just confirms a lot of that. History, Jim reminded me at lunchtime, when you're living history, today is part of that, you're so close to it, you don't realize that this is one of those benchmarks. So put a monument down, nail it down, here's one of those days, and stand on it. And this is the foundation for a lot of good work. We've told our story. Director George wanted a technical report. I wanted a novel. I wanted to be able to tell our story, and I think we've accomplished both. We have the technical platform, the basin plans, tell the uniqueness, where's Linda? The uniqueness of the basins, the flavor of each of the basins. I think we've accomplished that too through the basin plans. Hard work is not easy. I don't get up in the morning and think, well, I wish I have something hard to do today. But there's been a lot of hard work, and people rise to the occasion, and I think we're soaking in all of that. Hard work has been accomplished, Director Eklund, and I think we should feel very satisfied for this moment about this accomplishment. The respect has been talked about, the respect on the board, the willingness to listen. The willingness to listen to each other when I get on a jag about certain things. We've learned to listen. I think that's what's going on out in the roundtables also. We can agree to disagree. Let's respect each other enough. Let's get the facts. And we're getting past, don't confuse me with the facts. I've already made up my mind. No, let's get the facts and then let's start standing on that. So you think about all the technical work that's been put into place, the scenario planning, the cone of uncertainty, all these exercises that we've gone through to get us to this place. And I'm just pleased to be a part of it. People have taken ownership of this. I think that's important through the roundtable. When people take ownership of the basin plan and the planning, Becky, you've helped us. When we take ownership of things, I think that changes our point of view and moves us from self-interest to what's most beneficial for all of us. So, Madam Chairman, I have one more thought, that for someone to educate himself, he needs to hang out with people who are smarter than he is. And that's what I've done here. I get to hang out with people who are smarter than me. And when we look around the room and what we can learn from each other, it's been a great ride. So, Madam Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Smith. Any questions? If not, we'll move to the Yampa Green White Basin. Director Gallagher.
I'm the last one between us and the partying. Thank you, Madam
You're
Chair.
close to the last.
Close to the last. Again, I want to echo many of the sentiments, but I won't repeat every one of them. My thanks to the governor for having this great opportunity to take part of this. This is a great honor to take part in something much larger than ourselves. And indeed, we've had a historic day today, and this is a huge benchmark. I also have tremendous respect for our staff. You have sacrificed much. You are so dedicated. I'm just amazed. I've been in the work world for 40 years, had staffs work for me. I've never seen such dedication in a group of people, and under great leadership as well, with Director Eklund and his two lieutenants leading the charge, getting the work done that we do in our everyday mission, but also taking on this huge task without a great addition of personnel, if any, in addition. All the windshield time, the personal sacrifice, it's amazing. I'm just astounded. You've shown great endurance in this effort. This sustained effort has also left us with a great legacy that of a collaborative process that we hope we can continue to sustain, particularly at the basin level, and that's where the energy is, and that's where we're going to take this forward, from the basin level. That is going to give life to the plan and continue to give life to the plan. I fully support Director George's proposal to reference the plan in any application or business brought before us, because it will help keep the plan alive. It will help us educate us as a board to understand what these applications and work efforts are couched in, and their validity within the construct of the plan itself. It'll also educate the staff, but also more importantly, the public as to and demonstrate to the public that we are using the plan. It's not just sitting on a shelf. So many thanks for that proposal. It's, I think, a very important way to use the plan. This plan has also set some dramatic benchmarks. It really recognizes and validates the importance of environmental health and the contribution of water-based recreation to the economic health of local communities like ours. And also to the economy of the state. These are elements in our life here in Colorado now that have risen to the level of really being the underpinning of our brand as a state, as a place people want to live and raise their kids. So this is a very important benchmark, and We have it now here, and we will move forward with recognizing those as very valid activities that should be supported by this board, and this board has stepped up to that. The other aspect here is the introduction just recently more of the recognizing the importance of local land use policy, and having come from a local government volunteer position myself at one point not too long ago, and 10 years as a planning commissioner, I really recognize the importance of land use policy and how we grow. As we've said before, we're not going to grow our next 5 million the same way we grew our last 5 million. And we need to recognize that we're going to do that in a slightly different way. And that's going to take some time to really seize the opportunity and move forward with this culture change. It's also this whole effort has raised the awareness of all Coloradans regarding the critical role of water in their lives. And what testament to that is this 30,000 comments, unique comments, very thoughtful, really given us not just a testimony of their passions, but also excellent tech added to the plan itself, and really gave us a bottoms-up plan that we didn't have before. We had a framework, but this last 6 months of comments coming in has really helped build this plan into a technically correct document, and one that is well-balanced and also has a tone that balances and recognizes with respect the needs of our urban residents as well as our rural residents. I think we have a better product having gone through that and solicited and received all these comments. I didn't see anything in these comments that wasn't a sincere comment, that wasn't from the heart, but was really trying to add to the plan we had. Lastly, I think we have achieved this goal of producing a document that will help us move into the future. And I think with continual use on our part and referencing back to it, we can actually move forward and produce a great Colorado for our kids and their kids beyond us. So with that, I'd like to end my report. Thank you.
Director Gallagher. Appreciate all of your comments this morning, and really I think the staff, all of the CWCB staff and most of the Department of Natural Resources staff realize how important you are to us, and the Attorney General staff too. I see them talking back there, and they're conniving about something, but I want to thank you all for your help too. But
That's what you're afraid of.
well, that's enough. Director McLeod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we also have to thank the staff for their last great measure of devotion in this effort, and that is sitting here so that we don't make these profound comments to an empty room.
Yes, and appreciate that. And this is their paid job to be here, so I'm glad you're here. Director Eklund, I want to call on you for some comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So much is wow. This has been an amazing day, an amazing morning and afternoon here. All the things you said, each one of you, we're really going to mine the recording of this meeting heavily, because there have just been so many great statements that capture the moment, and maybe that's worthy of being bound up and sent out as well. But it reminds me that the plan is really it's a organic thing, and it's going to be online, by the way. So you've got proofs. Quick little logistical point. You've got these are essentially proofs. The plan is live. It's up and online, and you will have finals that have better bindings coming to you very soon. So that's a point of fact I just wanted to throw out there. But let me pivot back to the point of this whole afternoon, and that's been thanking people, realizing the moment, as Director Smith has been very conscientious about pointing out, when we fly by it, it's at our peril. So we've taken a breath here. It's really important that we do that. And I think it was Director Smith that called me several months ago, and he said, have you seen the clip of the coach? I can't remember if it was an Auburn coach or Ole Miss coach, some big SEC football team coach. Sorry, I don't know. Yeah, you guys, so I'm not going to start a war right there. But anyway, this coach, they'd won the big game, and the students were all on the field, and they're interviewing him, and he's yelling out over the top of them. And he says, I went in at halftime, and I said, we pay you guys to get scholarships. We feed you. We put a roof over your head. But what we can't do is we can't give you guts. We can't give you heart. And he goes, it's here at this school, it's BYOG, bring your own guts. And I thought that was great. And I've used that quite a bit, Director Smith, because it is bring your own guts sometimes. And this is a moment where it clearly was. Each one of you had to bring your own guts at different points in the last 2.5 years to the table, whether you were in your basin talking to a stakeholder that was just ticked off about something or another that they were hearing from you, or from your basin, or from some other basin, or from us, or if it was a moment where you were in this board meeting, or with this board sitting in your capacity and having a discussion there. So we've got some things to pass out to you here. That was Mara's very polite way of saying that. Wrap it up. Director Smith, you are fun wearing your hat to meetings, and it reminds me that the cowboy hat in its current form was invented right here in Colorado. John was working. He was terrible at mining, so he knew how to do hat making, and so he started making hats for the miners. And that's how the first Stetson was made, and it was right here in Colorado. So it is good stuff, and so we thought it'd be fitting if you all had you're not going to get a felt Stetson, 20X beaver hat, but it's a token that can sit hopefully on your bookshelf somewhere, and it does. These are sized to your head, so they will fit if you need to put them to use. But they're kind of tokens to you for all of your efforts, and we wanted you to have them. And I think they're emblazoned with a nice Colorado Water one of these pins on the hat band. So we'll hand those out, and then Mara, I think you've got, or Becky has. We have copies of the great. Very nice. And a hat you can throw on. It's kind of like, when you win the big game and you get to wear a nice baseball cap that commemorates the moment. So with that, I'm done talking, and we'll pass these out, and I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
All right. Is there any other business to come before the board? All right. I want to thank you all. Thank you for joining us today and being a part of this this very tremendous day and really helping us to get to this point. With that, we're going to adjourn, but I'll call for a motion for adjournment. Director McLeod?
Madam Chair, before we adjourn, and I'll make the motion, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you wear those ball caps with the bill to the front. And with that, Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. There might be a second, but before we get to the second, I'll let you know that Director Smith won't hire you if your ball kept back. So now I'm looking for a second. Will anybody second that motion? Director Wells, did you second that motion for adjournment? Thank you. We're adjourned.
My name on it? Oh, I do.